Hello everyone and welcome to LowRentRick Scale Modelling. This is my build of the Airfix starter set, the 176 scale Cromwell Mark IV. Now before we get going, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to my very small channel. It really helps me make more videos and get more videos out there. As do likes and comments on the video, because the great machine that is YouTube picks up those comments and pushes the video out to more people, and the more people that see it, the better I can do. Now, those of you that are frequent visitors to my channel will know that I brush paint primarily and I don't use primer. So in this video I've decided to give some primer a go. So I'm going to be using the Tamiya Fine Surface Primer in white, and later on for the weathering I'm going to be using the Revell weathering set to give me some effects, plus using some of my own to make a bit of mud and to really weather this tank up. I'll put links in the description below to those products if you want to get your own. So let's get on with the build. So the first job with the starter sets is to check your paints, and it's a good job I did because one of them is solid and leaked a little bit, so I'm going to thin that out with some acetone, some nail varnish remover. That tends to work to break them up. And then have a look at the kit. The kit's in very good condition. There doesn't seem to be any flash, and the sprues are good. Not a lot of decals to worry about on these little tank kits, these little armour kits. But let's get on with getting the parts primed up. The primer was easy enough to use. The spray pattern's really good. It came out and covered really well with just the one pass over. Obviously, one of the things I didn't realise is there's two sides to a sprue, so I should really be priming both sides. So I'll just catch that a little bit up here. Main body assembly is pretty basic on these small armour kits. You're basically building a box, but the one complicated thing can be the wheel configuration. There's a lot of wheels in this kit, so you just need to take a bit of notice of which way around you're doing those wheels, but we'll get onto that in a minute. You'll see that I'll be using the Revell contactor glue. I just prefer it over the poly cement. Poly cement's nice and solid and nice and firm for anything that's got a bit of structure, like airplane wheels that need to take a bit of weight pretty quick. But I find the applicator and the way that the glue interacts with the model much better with the Revell contactor. So now I'm going to apply a bit of paint to the wheels over the primer to see what the adhesion's like. I'm using a metallic enamel for the wheels, and it does stick. It sticks pretty well, but I find that the enamel sticks to the raw plastic quite well too. So as I say, priming's not a bad idea, but if you're building a model on a budget, you don't really have to worry about it. Please do check out my brush painting tutorial. The effect that I get is as good as a model that's primed up, and it's just about lots of thin layers that you build up. Check out that brush painting tutorial. It's a short video, but you can see that the effect is really quite good. The track pieces that come with this kit are solid plastic. Sometimes they're rubber, sometimes they're one continuous strip which you then have to join together. And the way that these are built as they're going to be sandwiched between the two versions of the wheels, which will hold them in place, I hope. So you know, the rubberized ones do look good, although they're harder to paint. This is a good start for somebody who's not done tracks before. I'm yet to do one yet with individual track pieces. It's something I do want to try. Please let me know in the comments if you've done individual tracks. I'm assuming it's going to be a nightmare, but we don't do this hobby for making things easy, do we? So here we go with the wheel assemblies. As you can see, there's a lot of them for a small kit. It's important that you know which way round these wheels go, so that you get a nice uniform line in between the tracks, so the track can be sandwiched in quite nicely, because there is a front and a back to most of these wheels. So get them all trimmed up quite nice, and then make sure you do get them the right way around. I'm about to apply the first layer of paint, so I'm using the kit paint. So remember, I had to thin this one down with acetone. You can use water. I just find that acetone, when you're a bit pushed for time, tends to cut through the lumpy paint a little bit better. So I'm still going to use the same method. I'm going to go for lots of thin coats rather than a thick one. So it will look quite washy when it first goes on, but it will dry really thin. I must say it's going onto the primer really well. It's sticking really well, a little bit better than it would on the bare plastic. So yeah, there's a bonus to the undercoat, or sorry, to the primer. Although it does look really thin and a bit shoddy at the moment, it does come together quite well when you start doing the thin layers. So here we go with the wheel and track assembly. I'd really like to do a much bigger kit. I'm just offering up and testing here to make sure I get them all the right way around. I did have to make sure I scrutinised the instructions a little bit. So we put the first layers on, and then what we're going to do is, once the first layer is on and secure, we're then going to apply the tracks. But first of all, it's a good idea at this point to give everything a nice coat of green paint so you can get behind it without bothering the tracks. Now on with the track sections. Make sure you get them the right way around. I didn't. So here we go, setting them on so we can get them onto the first layer of wheels, and then we're going to put the other layer of wheels on over the top, as I say, to sandwich the track in. It's causing me a little bit of an issue, so what I would suggest is sticking the last small drive wheel on last, so getting the tracks in place and then gluing in the drive wheel, waiting for it to set so it's nice and secure, and then you can go over the top with the next set of wheels. You'll see here, as I apply the next coat of thin paint over the top of the model, how the washy effect underneath, now that's dry, will just slowly disappear. It's easier to see in the time lapse as the colour becomes more solid, especially there. It's still very thin, the paint, but each layer just cuts onto the next one and makes that colour look much more deep. And it's you remain with the detail on the tank instead of obscuring it with thick layers of paint, because as that stuff dries, it really does thin down. And this model is in for some really heavy weathering towards the end, because I'm going to test out not only the black wash but also rust and mud all in the same model, and it will be overdone, but as my rule really stands, I paid for it, I built it, and I'll paint it however I wish. And that's something that you should subscribe to too, unless you're going for historical accuracy. And believe me, there are plenty of experts out there that can point you in the right direction for colours, for shade, for just how weathered to do this bit and that bit. But for me, I'm still learning my craft, so I've decided for this little piece of armour is going to get the works, and even if it is overdone at the end, I really don't care, because it's about me practicing and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't. Turret assembly was relatively straightforward, but it's not really self-supporting, so it's quite delicate until the glue's set. So if you apply any pressure to the square, it will collapse in on itself. So just be aware of that. What you could do is glue the base and the sides first and let them set, and then put the top on. But I'm quite impatient when I get to this level of the build, so just be aware that it's quite a delicate piece, is the turret. Another very thin layer of paint that I've now watered down in the pot, and we're going to let that dry. Then we're going to go over the surface again with some Vallejo matte varnish, which I find is absolutely amazing for this job. Before we put the weathering on top, it just works as a good surface for the weathering powders and the colours that we're going to put on. And it also makes it easier to correct your mistakes. If you put a nice varnish on, you can go and you can remove some of the powders just by adding water, and they will disappear. So we'll get this final colour of paint on, and then we'll get a bit of the varnish on. So once I've applied a thin layer of the Vallejo matte varnish, I'm going to look at the weathering powder. So I'm going to start with some of the black. Now these pigments, you just mix water in them and make them as thick or as thin as you wish, and then just see how they sit on the model. So as you can see, I'm doing sort of a black or a pin wash across the whole model here, and it really does make those little bits of detail start to pop out. I'm keeping it quite thin to build it up quite slowly. If you put too much on, just put a double water on and it washes it right back. So now I've got a coat of the black wash on and it's dried off. I'm going to use some of the rust powder. So I'm going to go around all the edges and the seams. It's going to be quite heavily rusted, and I'm going to use quite a bit of water to let it run, to use the surface tension of the water to make it run to the edges and stick. Now as you watch it apply, it goes on with a really dark rich colour, but as it dries, particularly on the turret here, you'll start to see it start to pale up. But once you've got the effect you want, again, if you go over the top with the matte varnish, it will darken that down quite a bit. So let's make this tank really rusty. And once I'm done with the rust, I'm going to make some of my own mud. So I'm mixing some green mud powder with some talcum powder and some water to give it some texture. Now all of these, the rust, the black wash, the mud, and plenty of others are in my scale modelling tutorials playlist, which I'll link in the description below. Please go and check it out. There's some quite good and quite simple tips there. You can use one or use all of these, and probably not to the large degree that I am, but I really wanted this model to be properly dirty, muddy, rusty, and I think I've achieved that. So now it's time to pop the decals on, and the decals will look extremely bright next to this darkened and dirty and rusty tank, but I will do a quick wash over the top of them before the final layer of matte varnish, just to make them look nicely weathered and in keeping with the tank. So now I'm more or less finished. The decals are on. I'm going to go over the top with some varnish. The varnish is going to be a little bit dirty. I'm going to keep bringing it backwards and forwards from the black and the rust for those bits that need it, and for over the decals. And once that's complete, I'm going to let it dry off. I really enjoyed doing this one. Learning the craft and learning how to weather it up. I think I got some nice texture on the mud. I probably could have gone a bit heavier with the talcum powder. And there we have it. What a fun build that was. I think it looks really good when it's dried off, and it's the last bits of the varnish as it's drying in the time lapse there. I think some will hate it with it being overdone, but I really like it. Thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. I really enjoy it when these videos do well, and a lot of them have been doing well so far. Please look at our Facebook group, Scale Modelling for Everybody. Come and join us, and please do consider liking, commenting and subscribing. It really does help me out. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you again in the next one.